Awesome. Well, yeah, so just to kick it off, thank you everybody. Welcome to episode 6 here of the Retail 365 podcast. We've chatted a lot about AI in our previous episodes, and this session will be diving completely into AI, and glad to welcome Michelle Fields and Eric here from the Neoteric team. So I think, yeah, maybe Michelle, we'll start with you. Do you want to give us a little bit of background about yourself? I saw you had some interesting brands in your background: Nike, Eddie Bauer, Ashley Furniture. But yeah, curious if you can kind of talk through how you got to where you are right now.
Sure. So I've been in the marketing field for 20 plus years. And like you said, I've been working with different brands such as Nike, Eddie Bauer, Napster.com. So I've been in the tech space quite a few years in e-commerce as well. Most recently, a couple of years ago, I was working for a private equity company. And that's kind of when AI kind of started. Becoming more mainstream, if you will. And because my responsibility was leading a global team, we would meet globally regarding marketing. And we started talking a lot more about AI tools and how they can help marketing. And so soon I became kind of involved and passionate about AI and AI tools out there. And so it's been a common interest of mine. And then when the private equity company, laid off some of us. What I decided to do was branch out on my own and started to really dive into AI. And I noticed that there was actually a niche in the market where there are tools out there, and there's people that are talking about the tools, but nobody is actually applying it to the day-to-day activities of what executives do. And so that's why I started AI Mentors with my business partner. And my business partner and I have known each other for the past 10 years. He also owns another business that does marketing. And so one thing that we wanted to make sure that we did was have a business that could actually roll up our sleeves and help define what are the business needs that executives have, and then fill those.
Very cool. Very cool. So one thing, incidentally, one thing we share in common is I have some experience in the private equity world and also was laid off a couple of years ago. But honestly, I think sometimes that's a blessing in disguise. I got involved with a couple of different startups, have been learning a ton about e-commerce marketing. And yeah, we're diving into AI with one of the brands that I'm working on. So no, thank you, and excited to have you. Yeah, Eric, do you want to give us a little background about yourself too, or?
Sure. So I got my start working for AT&T, running contact centers for AT&T many years ago, and then continued to do that for a number of brands. And through that, I'll say got familiar with customer relationship management systems, CRM platforms, and so. Transitioned from there into working for a CRM company for a number of years. And kind of one of the big claims to fame for us was our integrations to many of the ERP systems that were out there in the world, the back office accounting systems, and being able to share that type of information to the typical sales and marketing folks who are more the front end side of using CRM platforms. That got me exposure to ERP systems. And so from there, transitioned into selling ERP platforms for many years, and have worked in the Microsoft world, selling Microsoft's ERP and CRM solutions for many years. Co-authored 4 books on ERP and CRM solutions that went on to become Amazon bestsellers, including our most recent book, which was on AI and AI in the world of CRM and ERP systems. So great to be here.
Great. No, that's yeah, great timing with the topic of the discussion here. I think to kind of kick this off, we'll get into some of the use cases that we were kind of volleying back and forth. But I think Michelle, in terms of you kind of teed up how AI mentors came to fruition. I guess could you go a little bit more into detail about who your audience is, and who who you're working with? Is it everything from top level C-suite down to, data analyst, CRM analyst, or yeah, just kind of curious like who you're usually engaging with that has the biggest needs on the applications and tools and whatnot.
Well, to be quite frank, it has been exploding. So it's a good day to be in business with AI. So some of our customers or clients, I guess you'd say, are the C-suite executives who are way too busy to watch 20 YouTube videos about, a tool that may or may not be relevant to what they're working on. So we help them kind of digest what are the tools out there, what are their daily tasks, and how do we marry those tools to their tasks. We also work with companies who maybe want to streamline some of the processes in their sales team. So right now we're working with a company that just wants to educate the sales team about how to do lead gen, how to do prospecting a little bit more efficiently, and then also how to write product descriptions for some of the products that they're selling online. We're also working on different workshops for larger businesses where we dive in and do kind of a not a marketing audit, but a AI audit on everything that they are touching, and how do we maximize not only the tools that they're using, but are there tools that can replace or optimize what they're doing as well. So, and then we seem to do a lot of just 101, hey, this is how to how to do basic prompting, but we've really gotten into a lot of privacy policies and I guess you'd say compliance as well with AI lately. So it's all over the map, but it keeps us busy.
And this is probably for both of you, and this is something that I've been curious about. A lot of my life, I live in the direct-to-consumer e-commerce world, like those types of businesses. But have you all seen any trends with either business models, B2C, B2B, or industries that are more embracing of AI versus others? I guess, tech companies by their core is probably, a definite one that's probably stands out. But yeah, just curious if you all have seen any trends in the types of companies that are either asking about it or are more adaptive with the tools, or
I'll say this: almost every company that I talk to today, it seems like the world is. I sometimes say there's two things. First off, everybody's tasked with doing more with less. So, whether that's less in the form of human resources, less in the form of reduced budgets, but do more with less. And then kind of the corollary to that is, how can AI help me do that? And so I think almost every company is looking at those two things today, and trying to figure out, can AI do something for them? There's a lot of education. I'm sure Michelle is seeing this as well. It seems to me like we're doing a lot of education. That's the first step is everybody needs to try and figure out what AI could potentially do for them. And so the other side to that is, um, nobody is going to spend money on something that doesn't have some value back, right? I don't care how cool AI is. At the end of the day, it's got to have a business purpose. And so, what is the business purpose that AI solution is bringing to the table?
Yeah, I would marry that sentiment as well. And one thing that I've noticed too is a lot of regulated businesses seem to be a little bit more upfront because they've already had to have their AI policies in place. They've already, started to dive in. Okay, well, what does this mean for customer data privacy? And how do we use tools that can still keep that privacy, but help us advance? And I think that's, one area that I think is really surprisingly to me. I mean, I really didn't think about it a couple of years ago, but now it totally makes sense that they would be kind of the forefront. But I do say that it's really, what Eric was saying, it's really varied across companies, and it's maybe not so much an industry, but it's more the leadership type that is determining whether or not AI is important or not.
Gotcha. And so that's a good yeah, that's a good segue because I know Michelle in our some of our prep, you were mentioning a lot of your work is around compliance and providing advisory to executives about how to use AI with compliance. And yeah, I guess double clicking into that a little bit. I haven't worked at a big, massive company in a while, but I remember when I was at Allergan, Experian. I just remember all of the compliance training sessions we had to go through and stuff about like record storage. I don't know the types of emails you can answer, or there was a lot of things around that. I'm familiar with like CCPA, GDPR, like holding on to customer data and rules in place where you have to delete it. But I guess what are some of the common use cases of how AI is being used from what you all have seen
Eric, do you want to
Well,
take
I
that
mean,
for compliance.
I was going to say they're all over the spectrum in terms of use cases. For example, one client that we just worked with recently, um, they're a retailer of industrial supplies, and so uh, they're more B2B than B2C. But at the end of the day, it's in industrial supplies that they're out there selling all kinds of stuff. Think of it as kind of like a Granger type of organization. Um, but what they wanted to do, one of the challenges that they have from their sales side of their organization is sales is constantly coming to finance and saying, hey, what are the top 10 products that, our customers are buying right now? Or what are the 5 things that this customer buys on a regular basis? And so finance is constantly having to answer those queries from the sales team. And so what they wanted to be able to do was give the sales team an AI-based tool where they could go in and use natural language processing, just query the system to get that kind of information in a self-serve format rather than having finance folks have to be able to constantly serve that information up to them. And so that's one of the things that we did. We built out an AI solution using Microsoft's Azure AI tools. And now they're looking at extending that functionality above and beyond just the sales folks. Now that the rest of the organization has seen what sales has, the funny thing is now you've got HR saying, "Oh, we do something similar," and other parts of the organization as well. So that's one of the things that I think we've seen is that once you start a project, a lot of other folks start to see what the tools could potentially do.
Mhm.
And then, now they're understanding, oh, I can see how this could benefit us.
So that's interesting. So I guess when I think about that initial request of understanding the top sales by product or SKUs, like what you like in the pre-AI, you would just, tap into your data warehouse, use like Tableau or something to visualize a dashboard, and people can kind of look at it that way. But I guess is what you're saying, is it like an interactive user? Is it like a chat GBT type interface
That,
where you can ask, is that what you're getting at? Or yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So folks are now very familiar with ChatGPT, effectively the same type of tool, but it's querying their business data rather than just kind of the generic ChatGPT type of solution. Now it's querying data. In their case, that data is coming from their SAP HANA ERP system.
Right.
So, and that's a very complex system. If you're familiar at all with SAP, it's a very complicated system. It's not something you want to give the salespeople free roaming access to. It'll frustrate the heck out of them, even if you did. And so the idea here was to give them a tool that is simple for them to use, but gives them the information that they can get, and they can ask anything. They can ask for anything from the data. Now that's to go back to something Michelle said earlier. This gets us into the governance and compliance side, and that's an important element to this as well. And so part of what for this solution we did is to tie that into Microsoft's what used to be called Azure Active Directory, but basically it's now called Microsoft's Intra ID. But it's their tool for restricting what access any given user has based on specific rights and roles within the organization. And so
Yeah.
as a user, you have access to certain types of data. You may not have access to other types of data. we control that, and that gives us some governance and security around what they can query.
Got you. Yeah. Cool.
So to build upon what Eric was saying, some of the things that our customers are using or really asking to better understand is, with these highly regulated companies, they are afraid of AI, leakage or AI shadowing, where people would, within their company, would go online and just say, hey, I'm on ChatGPT. How do I rewrite this email? And in that information is proprietary information. So they do not want to spread that. So one of the things that we've been doing is focusing in on, okay, how do you create compliance within that? Do you block all .ai URLs? Do how do you know what tools to block, which not? And then, kind of working through the business cases for that. On the tool side, one of the things, like Eric had mentioned, Microsoft Copilot has been a huge influx of people wanting to understand how to use it better because it is that closed system where, one of the use cases is, how do I search documents that maybe we had an acquisition 3 years ago? What document was it? So instead of spending hours looking for a document, you can just do a quick search query and find that information. Or let's say that you are, creating a presentation for the board and you have an outline kind of, you can use, Copilot to help you refine that outline, create talking points, and then just create a PowerPoint for you all within minutes where, previously it would take days, to put all this information together. So lots of uses.
Yeah, that's really interesting. The one you first mentioned about kind of the restrictions within a company of sites and tools to use. I guess I guess somewhat related, but it's funny because I've been getting contacted by a lot of services to help organizations pop up more prevalently in AI searches. I think a lot of times, especially in the e-commerce world, search engine optimization has been huge to elevate your rankings in Google or Bing searches. But now it's a lot of people are starting to talk like the focus may have to shift to popping up or being present in AI search tools and how you can maybe game the system that way. But I never thought about what you were saying though, is kind of locking down access to certain tools at organizations. So that's really interesting use case there. So I know. So another one that curious to get your all's perspective on. So I'll tee up this topic about. So we wanted to chat a little bit about strategic planning, which could be very, very broad. Getting at mostly with probably newer brands. What's their go-to-market strategy, product, pricing, positioning. Ideal customer profiles. And I guess I'll just state one quick story. One of the startups that I'm advising right now, the CEO, he's fully embracive of AI to help out with a lot of our launch activities. It's a food recommendation mobile app. And he actually was saying there's now classes at institutions about how to use AI to launch new products. And they use AI end to end to kind of come up with product ideas, marketing taglines, imagery to logos, our audience types. And anyways, to me when he kind of mentioned that as like that they're teaching that at institutions about how to leverage it kind of and like that. But I know Michelle, I'll probably start with you to see how you've been working with brands on this front? Because just curious how much it's being embraced there.
It is absolutely. But before I jump into that, I don't know if you heard, but this morning, the state of California is allowing across the board for all their public universities a closed GPT system for universities. And so it's going to really change the way education is going to be working. And so it'll be fascinating to see how that evolves. Anyway.
That's good. Good nugget.
Yeah. So anyway, but yes, one thing that I've noticed is people think, hey, I can just create a new brand from scratch and have it roll up, which is true, you can. But, I think people need to take into consideration that there's a lot of things to consider when you are rolling up a brand, the copyrights, the just the likeness of the brand, etc. Because, just because AI created it doesn't mean it's completely unique. It can pull features that are regulated from other brands as well. So it's definitely something that you need to keep in mind. But from a business perspective, I know that others have. Right now, I'm working with a startup who their strong suit is e-commerce, but they're not great at branding. And so they've been working on developing that branding voice, the mission, vision statements. How do you do a content calendar? How do you, create those customer segments and personas? So, they've been using AI to help them streamline that process. And clearly, AI is not perfect. So one of the things that we're giving them as guardrails is this is your rough draft. You need to input your own information and your own stamp of originality in this because you want it to stand out. So
Just one thing real quick, while it's fresh in my mind. Yeah, one thing you just touched on, the messaging, the branding element. Do you also coach your clients on how to coach the AI tools to be able to recognize like a specific brand's, angle? Because that's one of the biggest pushbacks I get from some of the leaders that I work with is that they allegedly think they can detect if like email copy, for instance, they allegedly think they can detect when it's AI versus not. But from what I'm hearing from others, you can kind of coach these systems to reflect the tone. Like I just curious how much you get into that with your clients.
yeah, I mean, so you can create GPTs to kind of give AI its your own kind of tone and personality. And then also like on ChatGPT, you can actually personalize very specifically about you, which is kind of a newer feature that they've had in the last few months or whatever. But what is fascinating about it is AI keeps all of that information and stores it. And so, yes, you can say, hey, write this promotional letter like Tony Robbins would, or, do you know what I mean? And which is fine, but I think from a business perspective, you still want that originality. And just so because I've been in marketing for most of my career, I always keep that top of mind is you don't want to be like everybody else or be like somebody. You need to be original. And that's how you are going to stand out in the AI world is if you are creative and different than anybody else. So, and being authentic with that brand, not necessarily, um, you know, copying McDonald's, their stuff. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, the tools are just exactly that. They're tools, right? At the end of the day, there's still a creative element that's required in here. And also some, formatting and structure that is important when you're using those AI tools. Give it that formatting and structure. If there's something that you are specifically wanting, if you want an email in a particular format because that's your business format, then you can feed that into the AI and tell it, give it to me, give me, this, but give me this in this format. Whether that's a Word document because it's a proposal template or, whatever it might be. But you can use the tools, but you can also require that it give it to you in the format that you want it to be in. And that way you kind of stay within that compliance world as well. And the other thing that Michelle mentioned in there is obviously also, be cognizant of what you're sharing and with whom you're potentially sharing that. There's a funny story that goes back several years ago, but a Microsoft engineer not thinking about this, but you can use ChatGPT to create code. The Microsoft engineer had the brilliant idea to go to ChatGPT and upload a bunch of his code to help generate the new code that he wanted. The problem, of course, is that ChatGPT is an open source engine. And now you've just shared proprietary information in the form of Microsoft code out into the world. And so these are some of the other things that are important. Now, there are tools like Microsoft Copilot, Michelle mentioned that earlier, that do give you security around that so that you can't do that. Or if you do it, you're doing it within your own environment. You're not sharing it out to the entire world at that point in time. And so those are some of the things that organizations have to think about. And as users, we have to be cognizant of what we're sharing, who we're sharing it with, what we're doing with these tools. There's proprietary information. You don't want to put that out there into the world. So yeah, at the end of the day, security and compliance comes into all of these kinds of conversations uh, because it's important.
Yeah. Now that's such a fair point because I mean I fall victim to this, but I think a lot of people when they go to various AI tools, they're just trying to solve the immediate question that they have, whatever domain or function that they work with, but not really thinking about what's being shared and what potentially could be publicly made available to competitors or legal entities or things of that nature. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people fall into that trap. So that's a very, very, very fair point there for sure. Yeah.
It's just like, we all used to get those emails with links in them, and, people used to just click the links. And now we know from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. Be careful about those things. So, it's all just knowing what the tools are that you're using, understand what the limitations are, and then use them accordingly and use them, safely.
Yeah. Um, I think drilling down a little further, we kind of talked a little bit about creative, but if we kind of focus a little bit on marketing and media for a second, yeah, this is an area that's been fascinating to me because a lot of what I'm doing day to day is media planning and media buying for a couple of brands that are in growth mode, and it's really a construct of three or four things. It's what is your creative? What is your offer? Which media platform do you invest in? And then who's your audience? There's more to it. I'm oversimplifying it, but you kind of think about things through those four dimensions. And I guess, yeah, Michelle, I'll start with you. Yeah, curious how you've gotten into these types of discussions with your clients and how AI could help either accelerate the process to make these decisions, help with optimizations, or yeah, just curious where you all have focused discussions there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of those things, we're helping streamline that. One thing that we are diving into a lot more is that research capabilities with different AI tools and understanding what is the market about. So I don't know if you've ever used Perplexity before, but it's a very popular tool. And so the way that you can prompt that tool can give you some really, really informational data points that can help drive where should you attack, the next segment and how you should attack them. So I'm going to give an example. Like we were working with a person who was really into real estate and investing in real estate and where they should maybe buy their next property on, within I live in Minneapolis metro. And so we had looked at, okay, we started diving into what are the types of home or what neighborhoods have seen the growth in the past 5 years? What's the average rent? What's the average sales price? Which one has the best ROI? What are the new laws and regulations within those communities? So you can really do a lot of deep diving information and helping select, okay, you should look at this neighborhood and this will be your best bet in investing. So that's just an example of what one of our customers used AI for, is diving into all of the analysis of where would be your best customer. And so like for B2B businesses, because there's a lot of information regarding those businesses out there. You can dive into those businesses using AI research tools like Perplexity and get that information to help make your marketing way more efficient in your spend because you're not wasting money where they are not at. So
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I don't know if it's sorry if you had a comment, but I guess, the where my head went with this is so I used to be part of a team that was agency of record for so Honda and Acura, two big auto behemoths. They would spend 500 million in media every year, whether it was a new model launch, an upgrade to an existing model. And when you think about in the complexity of the auto space, they had three tiers of advertising. They had national level. They had what they would call tier two would be like local groups of cities, and then they would have advertising for specific dealerships, and they would invest 10 to 20 million in specific video or TV television advertising. The Super Bowl is actually coming up this weekend, and companies. I did a podcast about that a couple of years ago, but they're probably spending about that for 30-second spots. And I guess, yeah, I guess to both of you, have you seen AI used as a mechanism to maybe, test these large investment campaigns with prospective audiences in advance to see, how they would react before they go to market? In the past, it was done, there'd be like focus groups, you'd have panels and stuff like that. But I just wonder if it's a lot more sophisticated now. I know that's kind of an extreme example, but yeah, I was just curious if you all have seen that. Yeah.
um, if you're asking me, I would say I have not, but it sounds like a really interesting business idea. Because I feel like researching what the customer potentially could adapt or how they would adapt to new products, I think is really fascinating. And I think, with the market research tools that are out there, I think you can better identify the gaps that are out there and then fill those gaps with the new products.
Yeah.
And so, because I think what you're saying is how do you test, either products or maybe taglines, most likely products, with an audience. And I think knowing who your actual audience is and doing research on those audiences, I think you could probably pull deeper information from AI research tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with Michelle on that. I think right now the state of AI, where it is today, it's really good at analyzing the data that exists out there. So you can go in and, I better identify who your audience is based on the information that you have. But what the AI is not really ready to do at this point, at least not for most organizations, is that kind of future thinking or trying to determine if is this ad going to run, is this one going to be more successful than A or B, right? I don't think the AI is at that level yet, but I think where it can do, as Michelle was saying, is tell you here's the audience that you should be targeting for your ad based on past information, past data, based on the information that we have. And the other thing that's interesting about that is that there's so much data out there. When you look at the really big brands, like you mentioned Honda and Acura, right? They have a tremendous amount of information on buying behavior from their audience, right? From the people who are actually out there doing it. And they can get even more, right? Through the tools that are available to them, through the social media platforms and the data that they can acquire through those engines, they can know a tremendous amount of, Phil's buying behavior, Michelle's buying behavior, Eric's buying behavior. And then based on that, now this is where AI does get really interesting because the AI can filter through that information to say, is Phil more likely to buy based on the following information that we know about Phil? Is Phil the type of customer who would buy this or that? Those are the kinds of things that are interesting. And when you look at Amazon, this is what they're doing today, right? Amazon already does this with their own internal AI, and they surface that kind of information to you in the form of recommendations for things they think you're going to want to buy.
I think it's an interesting point, Eric. So for buying, I think it's interesting, but I think we also need to keep into consideration the bias that AI has based on previous data that has existed. So, using the example of COVID, for example, buying behavior was maybe different pre-COVID versus during COVID versus post-COVID, if that makes sense. And so, just to keep in mind, the data is AI is only as good as the data that you feed it. So you need to be mindful of what information was fed to AI and how do you parse through that to make sure that you are getting a more accurate result. So I mean, it's good example, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you raise another point about that is what data did you feed into it? If we're looking at Phil's buying behavior, what data did we feed in about Phil that is going to reflect that, or what data did we fill in about Eric? Because again, it can only use what information it gets, so it doesn't know everything, and it's going to give you spit out whatever you've asked for based on whatever you fed into it. So the old garbage in, garbage out absolutely applies here.
Yeah. No, that's a great call. And I mean, yeah, I again I go back to my big focus in my career has been e-commerce, and there were so many categories of companies that had explosive growth during COVID. Fitness in particular, which is where I've had some experience, and then because everybody was home and they were buying at home workout equipment, and they thought that growth would continue once public gyms opened back up, but that did not happen. And so yeah, it's yeah, the fact that it's not as forward predictive now is a good call out there. I think, just one last area that we kind of had earmarked was, so from a sales perspective, and kind of where my head was going with this is when I think about probably more B2B sales. Speaking to a lot of what Eric's experienced with CRM systems, and there's a lot of great systems out there to be able to connect marketing with sales teams and figuring out like what type of cohesive messages you want to have to different audiences at prospects to try to close larger scale deals. And I know in a lot of these CRM systems you can track engagements, responses, objections, and then that can be used for kind of follow-ups and whatnot. And yeah, I'm just curious how you all have seen either AI help sales teams directly, maybe in terms of focus, or maybe even connecting marketing and sales to be more efficient. Yeah.
I'll say, both, in the sense that it can help the individual seller, again, based on, the information we know about the behavior of that particular prospective client. What do we know about them? So can it help us to better target them with information from a marketing standpoint? We've got whether it's, new products that are going to be coming out, whether it's new solutions or services, whether they're a prospect for, whatever it is that we may offer. The AI can do an awful lot to help from that side of things. And it can help drive the engagement between marketing and sales in the sense of marketing better being able to support the sales team with the resources and the tools that the sales team needs. So, but Michelle, I'm curious, what is that, aligned with kind of what you're seeing also?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing now is a lot of marketing automation tools out on the market. And, so for example, if you use LinkedIn and somebody reaches out to you and you don't respond, 2 days later, you get an automated LinkedIn response. Oh, you must have missed my email or my direct message, blah, blah, blah. And I think there is a tendency for people to tune that out if they start noticing that it's really automated. So I think what we need to keep in mind is AI is a great tool, but you still need to keep that human element in your marketing, in your sales through AI if you can. So, for example, some industries, the lead time is 6 months or a year before most sales are closed. You can't just pop them, 50 automated emails right away, within the first month, because that will turn off a prospective buyer. You need to kind of drip that information out in a purposeful and meaningful way. You can't just spam them. And, I think, AI is great to get that information out in an automated way, but word of caution is helping put together the sales and the marketing together into a cohesive type of experience for the customer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think one thing we like to close on in each of these sessions is and I'll filibuster here for y'all to think on it, is if you have a prediction of where AI is going to go in 2025, like maybe was there a use case we didn't touch on, or maybe is there an ask that's been coming your way that you haven't seen a good solution for yet? I guess I'll kick it off. In just past discussions, kind of preparing for future podcasts, I'm hearing the concept of, the term virtual assistant is out there, and there's like offshore resources you can use at a really cost-effective manner to kind of manage your day-to-day activities and stuff. But I'm hearing there's going to be, I don't know if they're bots or what the exact terminology is, but these assistants that you're going to be able to interact with, and they'll be able to actually like book flights or transactions or travel for you. And not just travel, that's just one example, but once you've built up a rapport with a bot, they'll be able to kind of do things like that for you. So I thought that was interesting. I heard that's in motion. Not sure if it's kind of readily available, but yeah, that's just one that I think is going to be interesting in 2025.
I mean, some of those things exist today. You mentioned travel and booking travel and those kinds of things. But if you're going to book travel, just by way of example, right? I need to know. So again, this is the type of thing you've got to feed the data into the AI, right? What are Phil's preferences for travel? Does Phil like the aisle seat or the window seat?
Yeah.
Is there a particular airline that Phil likes to travel, right? So there are things that you need to feed into it in order for it to be able to do that. And you're going to have the same thing with any type of assistant. So there absolutely is an element of, you kind of called it training earlier, and I think that's an apt description. Train the AI on the things that are important. But there are things that AI is already doing today. So for example, I can have the AI transcribe this conversation that we've been having today. And there are tools for doing exactly that. And there are then the ability to have the AI feed me information from that. What were the most important things that we talked about today? And it can use sentiment analysis to decide, here are the things that Phil and Eric and Michelle talked about, and here's the top 3 things that came out of that conversation. So there's a lot of things that, say you missed the meeting, but the meeting was recorded. That's another thing. I can then use the AI to give me the 10 bullet points from the meeting that I missed. So there's a lot of things that AI can do today. But to go back to your question about trends, I think the big thing for 2025 is just the numbers of companies that are going to be using AI and the numbers of people that will be using AI in their day-to-day jobs. I think that's what we'll see in 2025, the growth there. It's exponential. You look at whether it's Microsoft, Google, every AI company that's out there, they all say the same thing. The uptick that we're seeing in the numbers of people who are using AI is massive. And I think, in the next couple of years, everybody will be using it in their day-to-day jobs in some capacity. In some cases, they may be using it without even necessarily knowing that they're using an AI. And that's a whole other side of a conversation, and maybe a topic for another day, because I think that's the next thing that will happen along the way here, is that AI will become so prevalent that people won't even necessarily realize when they're engaging with AI.
Eric, you stole mine. I was going to say, I was going to say, one of the trends that I'm seeing is now, with the potential deregulation of AI, is being able to have a all-knowing AI tool that can detect AI and the uses of AI and misinformation out there. Because now with social media not really having a lot of regulation regarding what information is out there, people are getting confused. People are getting, misinformed on things. And So because AI, you can make, any political figure say whatever you want on AI, video tools. And it's like, well, was that real or was that not real? Do you know what I mean? And so I think by the end of 2025, this is going to be a major issue for a lot of people. Is people are going to be turning away from a lot of social media and a lot of news because they think it's all fake. Do you know what I mean? Like they won't know what's real and what's not. And so I think that's a trend that is going to happen. It's just my prediction.
Yeah, that's a good closing because I know with especially not to single them out. I know with the changes with the X platform,
Yeah.
from Twitter, they used to have disclaimers for certain statements, and now it's just wide open. So yeah, I could definitely see some use cases and some appetite for that with just and then just with all when you think about all the news sources that are out there where people can get information like how to decipher what's real versus opinion is that's a lot of times where the disagreements and arguments start. So
And who is putting that information out there? Like, is it one of our adversaries that is, putting information out there to make it look like it's real? So I had read something somewhere that there's companies out there now that create fake people that look like real people and then make them social media influencers. And that's how they make money is with fake social media influencers, but it's people that are created from AI video. Like they're fake people, and then these people are becoming influencers, but they're fake. Does that make sense? And so there's companies that are profiting off of these fake influencers. And so that could be very dangerous. It's one thing if you're trying to sell a bikini, totally fine. But if you're trying to influence a country with whatever information, that's dangerous. So anyway, it's fascinating.
sure. Well, great. Well, no, thank you for the both of you for attending and sharing your insights. And I guess Michelle, to close out, where can people find you if they're interested in AI mentors and having further discussions here?
Sure. Our website is theaimentors.com. And so we have, all of our listings of different things that we can help you with, not only in your company, but personally. But then also, we're on LinkedIn as well. So.
Cool. Well, again, thank you very much. And
Thank you for having me.
yep. Hope you all have a great week. And no, this is really good for sure. So
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Michelle.
Yep. Thank you.